Morning, all. So, news of the day kind of video, although it's going to be the big topic first, and then we'll get into the other small, bizarre topics after. So, yesterday, Gary Bettman comes out and says, hey, we're not renegotiating this. And he's also been kind of upset with some of the leaks that have come out throughout this process. And of course, we've got Tony D'Angelo now on Twitter saying, that's it, we should just go back to playing hockey. And I get that, and there's players who want to get back to playing hockey. But what Gary Bettman's trying to tell people is it's not that simple. So I had all the math on the board. I was working on it last night. And then I thought, no, I don't want to. And I was trying to do a simplified version of this too. And there wasn't really a simplified way to do this that didn't become really, really dry. So basically, the cap is, of course, a 50-50 split, right? Now, the cap was being artificially inflated before we had any kind of global economic crisis. The cap was being, inflated without reason. And so the players had agreed last year to not increase the salary cap by as much as was expected. So the 2019-2020 season was one that saw the salary cap not go up by as much as they'd expected in order to drop the amount of escrow and in order to admit, yeah, no, the NHL's business isn't growing as quickly as this cap might indicate. So keep that in mind. Now, the NHL's going through a huge drop. So we're going to this huge drop now economically, and the owners are saying, hey, so they're going to owe us 50-50. And what Bevan's saying is, the shortfalls get paid back to us. So what he said was, we don't want to pay them out and then end up having to take 66% back. We don't want to take 2/3 back of what we give them. That doesn't make any sense. And by the economics, by the numbers that they're doing, that's what would happen. Is that the players would get paid out, and then at the end of the year, they do the economic numbers and they go, actually, you owe us, and then it's a certain amount of money. Now, the salary cap stays flat, with money owing by the players. And the players owe that money and it's got to get paid back. And so what Bettman's saying is, if they don't fix this, the cap could be flat for as long as 6 years. And they're saying that if the owners owe between, I think it's 125 and $250 million combined, that they want to tack on another year onto this CBA because they can't foresee being able to come up with a new CBA while the economics are so messed up. Now, payback's going to adversely affect younger players. So think about it this way. You just started your job, and now the boss has said, hey, so there's going to be some pay cuts. The veteran worker says, I'll just retire. And they go. You, on the other hand, for the next 3 or 4 years, you end up owing them money. And on some level, it looks like you're getting paid a really good wage, but a lot of that's going to be going back to your boss because the economic model doesn't work. Now, I've heard a lot about canceled season. Well, the owners could cancel the season. They can try, but that could go to court. Basically, the union can take them to court and say this is a lockout. And that's not allowed under the collective bargaining agreement. The players are not allowed to strike. The owners are not allowed to lock them out. And the players are going to argue this is a lockout. And I don't know that the owners have a leg to stand on because they were planning to play. So they can't say, well, we shut it down because COVID. They can't because they're negotiating right now. So the idea of, well, we'll just say we shut it down because of that, it's not going to fly. I can't see it working out. Now, prorated salaries were talked about where the owner said, okay, if you're going to play a 48-game season instead of 82, we're going to drop your wage because you're not playing those other 34 games. And the players went, nope, we signed a contract. We should get paid what we're worth. We already agreed to put money into escrow and to do the deferrals. Because of that, we don't see any reason we should have to give you more money. To which the owners are saying, hey, this has been way worse than we thought it was going to be. It's not a matter of them thinking that everything would be better by the fall. They just thought it would be at least somewhat better, that maybe they could look at getting fans back into attendance. We'll talk about that after this too, because there are some creative ways around that are being at least looked into by NHL teams. But a canceled season isn't necessarily going to work. Prorated salaries, the players don't want to do that either. And I understand you've signed a contract. And an example I would use is this. So players get like a bonus for playoff games, but they don't get paid for playoff games. You get paid for regular season. So if you go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, well, you've given the NHL say 20 games of your service and you've got a bonus for that, but you didn't make your wage. You're already paid. You're paid as soon as the regular season's done. You've already made all your money for the year. So it's kind of a mess. And it's kind of something that I was really surprised, and I've got this in blue down here. I'm really surprised they didn't do what I thought they would do before we had the return, which was agree to a drop in the salary cap, which other leagues have done. The NFL, there's talk about how much their salary cap's going to drop next year. The NBA, they agreed to a pay cut across the board. And I know players have agreed to deferrals. They've agreed to keep the salary cap flat, and they're doing more escrow. But they could have just dropped the cap. And they could have said the cap will be tied to income. The end. Meaning that if the salary cap drops to, say, $40 million, well, it drops to $40 million. And then you find a way around it. Now, I understand that for the players, that would be a non-starter. And I get it. But, again, in any other job, your wage is tied to how much money your business makes. And again, I know people are going to say, well, Walmart makes X billion dollars and they don't pay a person a living wage. I get it, but you don't have a 50-50 revenue split between workers and the owners. When you have a 50-50 split, to me, it makes sense to say the cap has to be tied to how much money you generate. So, and there are businesses that do that in the States, and that's been a successful business model where a boss has said, all right, so if you work here, you have a share in the company. So if the company appreciates in value, you make more money. And people thought that sounded crazy, but it works because there is some drive to work harder if you know you're going to make more money. If you know that your hourly wage is going to go up if you do a good job, and that's all it takes, and that the boss can't screw you over because he likes somebody else more, that's a pretty sweet deal. And so, yeah, and then again, if there's an economic drop, then your money's probably going to drop as well. Both countries, both Canada and the U.S., there's been economic impacts. It's been more severe on the American side of the border than on the Canadian side of the border, but it's going to take years for this to recover. And if the NHL players decide this is the hill they're going to die on, it's a bad look. If the owners decide this is the hill they're going to die on, it's a bad look. While other leagues are finding a way to come back. And, the funny thing is, I've seen a lot of people saying, well, the NBA's coming back. Yeah, right. But are we really not anticipating any kind of stoppages from the NBA, or that things could... I mean, you don't have as many players on a roster in the NBA as you do in the NHL or the NFL. I think it's kind of a little bit easier to manage that because you've got a much smaller roster. But, and there's ways around it. But just because the NBA has a start date doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to go fantastic from that start date. So start dates are great. I do wish the NHL had one so we could start doing season previews and diving into it. But we're still stuck with this. Because what Bettman's been saying is, if the players decide, well, we'll just play, forget it, they're going to owe us a lot more money. So either we try to find a way to make a reasonable demand of them now, or they owe us an absolute crap ton of money later, and we're going to have this fight anyways. He's not happy about the way it's been talked about in the media, so that tells me that maybe the reports that owners are mad they didn't read the memorandum of understanding, maybe he didn't want that to get out, and this is why everything was quiet for the last couple of months. He doesn't want stuff getting out, and he is talking to Don Fear. They're trying to figure this out, but there's a lot of hurdles to cross before we can get to a season. And again, this is going to go on for years. So if the NHL players get their way and we just go back to playing and there's no further concessions, it's going to lengthen the amount of pain, which if you're a veteran and you're retiring after this year anyways, to quote Jeremy Roenick back after the lockout in 04-05, I made my money Veterans screwing over rookies happened in 04-05 when they went, all right, well, we'll salary cap the kids. The kids make a maximum of $900,000. Let's go back to work. And when he was asked, and I believe it was on TSN, they said, how do you feel about the fact that you guys just caved on the kids having a salary cap that keeps them below $1 million? And he just shrugged and said, I made my money. And like, you're on your own. So, and that really kind of encapsulates why the players union always ends up with fractures in it. Because you will have those players, those veterans, who say, fine, I just won't play. And players who go, younger players who are thinking, well, I'd like to get a raise next year. It's going to be really hard for me to argue a raise if we don't have a season. And then the league loses its TV contract. Who knows what kind of contract it gets. This could hurt me for years. Whereas, again, the veteran might be like, I'm fine. I don't need it. Whatever. I'm at the tail end of my career. Yeah, my cap hits $8 million, but I only make $1 million. So, whatever. I can just leave. So, we'll see where this ends up. We'll see when there's a break. But for now, this is where we're stuck. And this is what the owners and the players are arguing over, is when does that money get... Because it's going to have to get paid sooner or later. And again, the idea of, well, just go back and play. It's not that simple. It really is not that simple. But again, we'll see what happens. Odds are they'll meet in the middle. The owners are making demands that I think they know they're not going to get. The players are likely making demands they know they're not going to get, and they're going to have to sit down and work it out and find that middle ground somewhere. All right, speaking of trying to find some ground, Anaheim, Boston, LA, and Pittsburgh. It's being reported by Elliot Friedman that these 4 cities, these 4 teams, are looking to play games outdoors. And this was something that was floated out there by some subscribers not too long ago. I want to say in live streams and comment sections. And I thought, nah, I don't think so. But they're looking at it. Where teams are saying, hey, we want to have fans in attendance. We want to be able to make money. Unlike Roenick, who's made his money. And so games outdoors could mean fans in the stands. It could mean the ability to have, a decent number of people there. This could make a huge difference in the income of the league. Now, the cost of maintaining outdoor ice, I would think, would be much higher. I would also think that those stadiums are much larger than the arenas that they normally play in. I would think there's more costs there as well. But they're trying to figure out a way to generate. And not only that, but it makes a difference on TV. I know when I'm watching a football game that if it's in a stadium where they've allowed, say, even 500 people into the building, it makes a huge difference. The energy level of the game changes. And yet, all the football players can hear all the calls, which is, I swear, quarterbacks this year in football have started really improvising some of the shouts they do before they actually snap the ball. And I'm okay with that. I think that's kind of fun. I know a game I was watching the other day, and Sunday, and then they'd snap the ball, and I'm like, it sounds like a commercial. But we'll see if the NHL is able to get creative and how they're able to put games together. And we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening here. It likely doesn't work, but it's an attempt. And I admire the attempt. For Evander Kane news, if you didn't see yesterday, because it was basically trending in Canada. I know it was trending in Canada. I don't know about the U.S. But Logan Paul has accepted the challenge from Evander Kane instead of Jake Paul. Now, I've made a video on Logan Paul before. That was on the Entertainment Guy channel. I was telling him to knock it off with posting videos that were hurting the rest of us on the platform. But this is bewildering. This is the kind of crossover that I don't think any of us saw coming. Logan Paul accepting the challenge. Why didn't Jake Paul accept the challenge? It's now, again, I know people are going to say, oh, Evander Kane's going to get his butt whooped. Evander Kane, his dad, amateur boxer, it's possible Evander Kane could hold his own. So, and again, these boxing matches are exhibitions. It's not like, Logan or Jake Paul have gone out and beaten Mayweather or anything. It's not, it's not like Tyson got knocked out by Jake Paul at some point. So, this is going to be one of those weird things that if it happens, and that's an if, because keep in mind that professional athletes are under a certain contract, and there are certain off the ice activities which are deemed to be kind of sort of dangerous that they're supposed to at least check with because they may not be insured. I'm going to go ahead and say boxing can cause concussions. I'm going to go ahead and say the NHL could step in and say no. So we'll see whether or not it actually happens. I could see the Sharks stepping in and saying no. So, I mean, I'm sure that this would be put on for charity and it would be some big, huge spectacle. I'm not convinced it's going to happen just because both of them agreed to do it. So, we'll see. Minnesota fans, good news. Your players are all coming back, and they're all about a dozen of them. It looks like cleared to play, or cleared to practice, I should say. Nashville, of course, had a scrimmage, so they're getting set. And Kaprizov has arrived, and once he's done with his testing and isolating, and he's out with his new teammates, look for some more excitement around the Minnesota Wild and the young kid they've got that I think is going to be pretty good. So the hype should be, well, pretty strong, I would think, about Kaprizov. This was in the news today, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Seattle has apparently only got one hockey bar in Greenwood, and it's called the Angry Beaver. Walls covered in hockey jerseys. Checks out. That's hockey, all right. So they're apparently closed down right now as being a bar and all of this. And they're hoping to make it through the pandemic. I sure hope so too. So, yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of businesses get closed down and not necessarily, find a way to reopen. Hopefully, they're able to get through this as well. All right, so I tracked it down. So there's a fundraiser going on right now, a GoFundMe. Save the Angry Beaver. They've raised $16,924 so far of the $50,000 goal. To save this establishment. So that's good. And there was a note on November 24th about being overwhelmed by the support shown. 283 donors, and over the last 15 minutes, they've raised $145 US. So that's good. Bringing attention to this apparently is really helping, so they've got a GoFundMe for them. And yeah, one thing this year has done is it's shown that people can be pretty cool and pretty giving. So if you can take some of the noise and sort of push that to the side, there are some really good people still left in this world. And also, we'll be doing a NHL 21 live stream today. We'll see how long it lasts. So I'm going to throw this in at the end of this. I was on my PlayStation yesterday, and I think my PlayStation itself is having a hard time maintaining an internet connection. I think that's part of what the problem is, because I was going through it and changing the settings, and I've tried changing the settings a couple of times. We'll see whether or not it does. I had a PlayStation 3 that had that problem too, where it just did not make an internet connection. I'm pretty sure it was the 3. Yeah, it was the 3. And I had to just replace it. Eventually, it was just, replace it, because I looked at the options for how to fix that, and it was, it's cheaper just to replace it. So we'll see, but I will try. And if I eventually end up needing to replace my PlayStation, I'll probably get a 4 again, because the 5's too expensive. It's a lot of money. So, yeah, there you go. And for anybody who goes, well, you bought all those jerseys, didn't you? Because I didn't buy a PS5. If I bought a PS5, I would have been like, now I can't buy myself some reverse retro goodness. So there you go. Again, hopefully cooler heads prevail on this topic, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. I saved the math. I left the math off the board. I was going to put up on the board, like, okay, if the salary cap is this, but the league actually makes this amount of money, how much money will the players owe the owners? And it does get to be a lot of money very, very quickly. Even with escrow, even with deferrals, it can end up being a lot of money quickly. But we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.